The race began with a loud horn. Hundreds of runners moved forward at once, filling the street with the sound of shoes hitting pavement. Some ran fast from the first second. Some laughed with friends. Some looked calm, like they had done this 100 times before. He stood near the back. His hands were shaking. He had only started running 3 months earlier. Before that, he could barely run for 5 minutes without stopping. He had spent years telling himself he was not athletic, not disciplined, not the kind of person who woke up early to train. But one day, after climbing a flight of stairs and feeling completely out of breath, he decided he was tired of avoiding his own life. So he started small. He ran for 1 minute, then walked for 2, then ran again. At first, it was embarrassing. He would see experienced runners moving past him in the park while he struggled to breathe. Some mornings, he wanted to turn around and go home before he even began. But he kept showing up, a little more each week. When he saw the local 5-kilometer race advertised online, he registered before he could talk himself out of it. Now he was standing at the starting line, surrounded by people who looked stronger, faster, and more prepared. The horn sounded again, and everyone moved. For the first few minutes, he did well. His legs felt light. The crowd around him gave him energy. People on the sidewalk cheered as runners passed. This is it, he thought. I can do this. But after the first mile, his breathing became heavy. After the second mile, his legs started to hurt. The runners around him began disappearing ahead. One by one, they passed him. A woman pushing a stroller passed him. An older man with gray hair passed him. Even someone in a costume passed him. He tried to laugh, but his chest hurt too much. By the time he reached the final stretch, the streets were almost empty. The cheering crowds were gone. The banners were being taken down. The runners who had finished were drinking water, taking photos, and heading home. He looked ahead and saw the finish line in the distance. It felt impossibly far away. His body begged him to stop. No one will care if you quit. A voice in his mind said. And maybe that was true. No one was watching. No one would know if he stepped off the course. No one would blame him. He had already tried. He had already come farther than most people expected. But then he remembered the first day he tried to run. He remembered standing in front of his apartment building, too embarrassed to begin. He remembered the first minute of running, the burning in his lungs, and the voice that told him he could not do it. He remembered every morning. He had gotten out of bed when he wanted to stay under the covers. He had not come this far to let an empty street decide who he was. So he kept moving, not fast, not gracefully, but forward. His pace became more of a shuffle than a run. His shoulders dropped. Sweat ran down his face. His legs felt like they belonged to someone else. Then he heard a voice, "Keep going." He looked up. Near the finish line stood an older volunteer in a bright vest. She was holding a small medal in her hand. The street behind her was empty. The finish line looked almost forgotten, but she was still there. Waiting. He took another step, then another. As he crossed the finish line, there was no crowd cheering, no cameras, no friends shouting his name, just the volunteer clapping with both hands. "You did it," she said. He bent over, trying to catch his breath. "I came last," he said quietly. The volunteer looked at him for a moment. Then she placed the medal around his neck. "No," she said. "You finished." He looked down at the medal. It was small. It was simple. It was probably the same medal everyone else had received hours earlier. But to him, it felt heavier than anything he had ever held. Because he knew what it represented. It represented every time he had wanted to give up, every time he had felt embarrassed, every time he had compared himself to someone faster. Every time he had believed that being behind meant he should stop trying. He walked home slowly that afternoon. His legs hurt. His shirt was soaked. His body was exhausted. But inside, something had changed. For the first time, he did not see himself as someone who could not finish things. He saw himself as a runner. Not because he was the fastest. Not because he had won, but because he had kept going. Over the next few months, he continued training. He ran in the rain. He ran on cold mornings. He ran after long days when he did not feel like doing anything. Some runs were terrible. Some runs were short. Some days, he had to stop and walk. But he no longer felt ashamed of that. He understood that progress did not always look impressive. Sometimes it looked like tying your shoes when you are tired. Sometimes it looked like taking one more step when no one is watching. A year later, he returned to the same race. He stood near the back again, but this time he did not feel afraid. He looked around at the runners, the fast ones, the confident ones, The nervous beginners. Then he noticed someone standing alone at the back of the crowd. A young runner was stretching nervously, staring at the ground. He recognized the look immediately. The doubt, the fear of being last. Before the race began, he walked over. "You ready?" he asked. The runners shook their head. "I don't think I can do this." He smiled. "You don't have to be the fastest," he said. "Just don't stop." The horn sounded. The runners moved forward. And this time, he ran with a different kind of strength. Not the strength of someone trying to beat everyone else. The strength of someone who had learned that finishing last is still better than never beginning. So if you feel behind, remember this. Your journey is not a race against everyone else. There will always be someone faster, someone further ahead. Someone who makes the path look easier, but their pace is not your purpose. Your purpose is to keep going. To keep showing up. To keep taking the next step. Because one day, you will look back at the version of yourself who was afraid to begin, and you will be proud. Not because you came first, but because you refused to quit.